For Saturday, the 8th of July, I'm Randy Kure coming at you with a weekend edition of What's Up the Sports podcast. We are live via Twitter Spaces. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're downloading today's episode as a podcast or watching it on YouTube, appreciate you as always. Today's episode is all about the season what that was in the NHL. The Vegas Golden Knights are on top of the pyramid, defeating the Florida Panthers in convincing fashion. Is the NHL gaining more interest, especially in the Southern United States? A number of key free agents have found a new home. A number of key free agents apparently don't want to call Canada their home. And is Chicago going to be a home of some glorious memories with Connor Bedard heading to the Midway? I mean, hey, look, it's the second week of July. If I'm talking hockey, I am so honored to have today's panelists here. Will Pesek is a producer for News 12 out of Hunter Valley in the Long Island, New York area. He just finished an overnight shift and is on his way home as we speak. Will, thank you so much for your dedication, and I hope everything's going well. How are you?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for having Liam and I. We can't tell you how much it means to us, to come on your show. And again, it's totally not a problem at all. Anytime I can talk sports, it's my passion. It's what wakes me up in the morning to go do my job. So I appreciate it. And I just wanted to answer your question about the NHL gaining more interest in the southern states of America. I think this Stanley Cup was bad rating-wise because you have probably, and no disrespect to the Florida Panthers, the worst team in the playoffs go to the Cup Final against one of the newest franchises in hockey. So for an old-timer, that doesn't sound like an enticing matchup, right? Vegas versus Florida. But as a hockey fan,
Will, sorry, if I could just quickly interrupt, I do want to introduce Liam as well. I definitely want to jump on what you're about to get at. But Liam Gotimer is the director of broadcasting and communications for the Atlanta Gladiators of the East Coast Hockey League. Just completed his first season, albeit halfway through the season, joining the Gladiators. He's ready for his first full campaign this coming fall. Liam, congratulations on what you've accomplished so far. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Randy, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, me and Will, it's always a pleasure to come on and talk hockey, just talk sports in general with you. And again, we're excited for today's episode. And like you said, anytime we're able to talk about hockey in July is a good day. So
no, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Will, as you were.
Yeah, I'm sure Liam could attest to this too. I mean, he used to live in New York. I mean, now he lives down in the South, so he could attest more to how hockey is down there. But I think from a hockey fan's perspective, living in America, being a diehard hockey fan, I didn't mind seeing it, Florida versus Vegas. Florida had the underdog story, right? They came into the playoffs, the worst team statistically in the postseason, barely getting in. If Pittsburgh beat Chicago, they're not in the playoffs, right? So Pittsburgh lost to Chicago, and now Florida has this Cinderella run. Meanwhile, Vegas seems like they steamrolled every opponent they faced. Every opponent they faced, it wasn't even close. And it was quite impressive what they did. So I can understand the non-diehard fans, the casual hockey fans, not having an interest. But for me, and I'm sure for Liam as well, it was kind of cool seeing Vegas, who's never, I'm going to say never win anything. They've been in the league for 6 years, face off against Florida. It was kind of the two teams you didn't quite expect to start of the season.
Well, you didn't expect it, but I mean, is it possible? I mean, obviously Vegas, they went through a merry-go-round of goaltenders. I mean, they had Aiden Hill lead them to the promised land. And I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky, he had flashes of brilliance, but as you mentioned, got by the skin of their teeth in order to make it to the final. And then obviously beat my Toronto Maple Leafs and Carolina, and of course the team with the best record in NHL history, that being Boston. But would you call that a fluke? Because the way I see it is that Obviously, the Panthers didn't have that strong of a regular season, but Liam, I mean, that's what playoff in sports is all about, is it not?
You have to throw the regular season completely out the window once it's playoff time, and especially when it comes to hockey. And the Florida Panthers, like you said, are a terrific example of that. Definitely an underwhelming regular season. Will, like you mentioned, the last team to qualify for the playoffs, and like you also mentioned, one game could have literally decided whether the Penguins or the Panthers made the playoffs, and Florida, of course, with the subsequent Cinderella run. So I think it's great for hockey. I think it was an awesome run by the Panthers. It stinks that they weren't able to put it all together and take down the Vegas Golden Knights. But again, for me, as a diehard hockey fan, it was very cool, like Will said, to see two teams who had never won a Stanley Cup before compete against one another in the finals. So
I think what my problem is that I mean, Vegas is just so new in the professional sports scene. That's number one. Obviously, they started the Golden Knights is the first team in Las Vegas. They started, of course, in 2017. Miami. Getting back to Vegas, I mean, now they have the Raiders. There's talk of an NBA team over there. Oakland Athletics maybe heading over to Vegas. Miami. I mean, it wasn't really that long ago when the Miami Heat and the Florida Marlins came into their respective leagues. I mean, it was in the 80s. I mean, Florida Marlins started in the early 90s. But as we know, Miami is not that die-hard of a sports town. And what I'm wondering more than anything, I mean, like we've seen it ourselves. The Miami Heat had the incredible run with LeBron James. And as soon as they thought that they were going to lose the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs, Ray Allen hits an incredible three-pointer to send that game into overtime. Meanwhile, hundreds of fans had left the arena. So, I mean, I guess what my question is that is it so much that a team didn't have a great regular season and just caught lightning in a bottle as Florida did? Or is it more so because it is the city of Miami, with due respect to them, not the greatest sports community?
Randy, I think it's not a matter of who the team is. I think it's a matter of when you play them. And I think we've seen the example quite often in sports. Like you mentioned, South Florida, Miami, the Heat, the big Ray Allen shot. Look at the Panthers. But look around sports, and a lot of these, and you want to say not expected, right? But look around sports, and you see it all the time. Like we just saw the Panthers go all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. And the fans may not be diehard fans there, but it's a result-driven business where, again, no disrespect to people that live in these areas, but if you're if you're a free agent and you have two offers on your table to play in South Florida or play in Winnipeg, when the winters in Winnipeg are going to be below zero compared to Florida, where your winters are 65 degrees and sunny. So I think all the players are starting to realize that it's just, the quality of life. And here in the States, you have the no state income tax, where in Florida, you get all of your salary, where states like New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, where half your paycheck gets to state taxes. And I think what's made these teams so successful is, although there's not a lot of fans in the area, they are going to areas where it's a successful quality of life, if that makes sense, kind of.
Well, it definitely makes sense. And I think you had forgotten the anonymity that certain players can have playing in non-hockey communities. You think of, Dallas. I mean, could Tyler Seguin walk through a mall in Dallas and not really get noticed? I think it's very possible if Tyler Seguin played for the Toronto Maple Leafs or
and
the Edmonton Oilers.
Nashville's a perfect example. I was just in Nashville for the Country Music Festival back in June, and I asked everybody there, I said, how do you like the Predators here? They go, we are diehard Nashville fans, but we can't tell you a lick about hockey. So they care about the Predators because the Predators exist down there, and they put on a good product, and it's a great place to live. It's a great area to live. But the fans just simply, they care about their team. But if there was a regular night against, Predators versus Blackhawks on a Tuesday in February, they may not go compared
Is that
to
a problem?
game in April. Is it
Is
a
that
problem?
because I mean, think of any NFL player in any NFL team on any NFL
Yeah,
city.
it's sold
Chances
out.
are that person's going to get recognized, and the
Yeah.
NFL is pretty popular in the U.S.
Right. Right. Like if you run into Patrick Mahomes in Tuscany, Italy, you're going to know who Patrick Mahomes is. If you run into Philip Forsberg in Dallas, Texas, you might not know who Philip Forsberg is. And I think it goes back to the conversation me, you, and Liam had a couple months ago where we spoke about the NHL populating their players and gaining more recognizability for some of their star athletes. Like now, their poster boy child is Connor Bedard. And I think Liam could attest to this too. If you show Connor Bedard to anybody, we ain't going to know what it is. But if you show somebody Victor Wembanyama, you're going to know who it is.
Yeah, I just asked Britney Spears, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. But I mean, yeah, and we had talked about this, as you had mentioned, Will, and Liam. I mean, the reality is that there are 4 known major sports in North America, and it seems that hockey is a distant fourth. And when Gary Bettman became commissioner of the National Hockey League back in the early 90s, there was a blitz to include the Southern United States in the NHL family. And it started with San Jose. And as Will mentioned about Nashville, we talked about Florida. There's Tampa, there's Dallas, Arizona, but how much longer is Arizona going to last? But with regards to this particular playoff edition, with Carolina, Dallas, Vegas, Florida making the Final Four, I mean, that could only help the NHL getting more recognition in not only the Southern United States, but the U.S. as a whole.
Exactly. And that was what was coming to my mind right when Will was going through his point, is that when he was talking about all of these successful teams, they're all coming from the southern part of the United States. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have won, 2 of the last 4 Stanley Cups. So, right out of the state of Florida, we see the Panthers again on their miracle run as well. So I think hockey is popular everywhere. I think it's going to take a little bit more time for it to grow exponentially in the southern part of the U.S. But that, I think, the fact that it's not where New York is or where Toronto is, I don't think that that's a knock on how the NHL is marketing its players.
Well, and we're going to get to Vegas and this incredible run that they've had over the it's not even decade, but obviously I'm pretty sure that you guys don't know what you were doing on the 22nd of June 2016, but that's when the NHL announced that they were going to go to Vegas. And I was skeptical. I mean, look, as a traditional hockey fan from Canada, hockey in Vegas, I just didn't see a jive. And 7 years later, they have won the Stanley Cup. I mean, Will, how would you describe Vegas's journey since day one? I mean, I think
definitely risky. If I'm being honest, definitely risky. I mean, you got to look at how they started, right? This was a Vegas team that said we want to be competitive right away. And Liam and I were talking about this earlier in text messages about baseball playoffs. It's similar to hockey playoffs, where the playoffs are simply a crapshoot, right? Like nobody predicted the Vegas Golden Knights going to the Stanley Cup Final in year 1, right? Nobody predicted that. And here they are 7 years later in the Cup Final after the best team in hockey history gets dethroned. They face a number 8 seed who made it really hard. Tkachuk is playing with a broken sternum, for Christ's sake, in the Stanley Cup Final. But back to Vegas, it's like it was very risky because they have no future, right? They literally have no future. Where are their draft picks? Where is their prospects? Who is in their AHL system? They threw a lot of that away to get the guys like Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Alex Pietrangelo with the contract they gave him. Aiden Hill is locked up now for 2 years at $4.5 million. They don't have a future because they don't have a lot of cap space or draft picks even. I mean, Keegan Kolazar seems like their best prospect if he's even considered a prospect at this point. So it was risky. It paid off. 7 years later. But at some point, they're going to look themselves in the eye that they might be bad for a decade because they have absolutely no future. None. They have no future at all.
Well, but the fact of the matter is that they're in one of the most appealing cities in North America.
Which is very true, and it's attractable to free agents. But at some point, they're going to have to say to themselves, we need to start fresh. They don't have a franchise icon. None of those guys who won a cup were drafted by Vegas. Jack Eichel was a Sabre. Mark Stone was a Senator. Like, they don't have, Pietrangelo was a Blue. So they don't have a franchise icon that's drafted, that's groomed by Vegas to be that guy. And it's going to take a while for them to get that if they continue to have success, which is why I'm saying it was a risky gamble and it paid off. While Seattle had a different approach. Seattle drafted very high. They wanted to start young, Shane Wright, and they didn't rush it. And they're not rushing it. They're following the system that Dave Haxtell has in place for them to be successful long term.
I see where you're going with this, but I mean, and is it comparable a 6-season run versus a 2-season run? Because nobody really knew what Vegas was gambling with when they were 2 seasons in, were they not? I mean, they go to the Cup Final in their rookie season, but then they turf Gerard Gallant after their 3rd season. And I was thinking about this as you were talking about, like, is this sustainable? And Liam, I mean, Will does make a decent point in the fact that you gamble with your future. Yeah, sure, it paid off, but in the long run, is this something that could be a huge problem for the next 5, 10, 7, 10 years in Vegas, where they don't really have a lot of pieces to build for the years to come?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I see where both of you guys are coming from because, Randy, going to your point, I think the allure of playing in Las Vegas will always be there for free agents. So necessarily building up your developmental pipeline, is it necessary at this juncture coming off of a Stanley Cup victory and knowing that players are going to want to be on your team in the future no matter what? So that's kind of where I definitely see your point, Randy. But again, going back to what Will said, I was very critical of the many moves that the Vegas Golden Knights made in their first couple of years of existence that were really just risky. And again, like if it didn't culminate in a Stanley Cup this past season, I'm not sure where I'd be at, with my mindset just evaluating this team. There have been many, many trades that have had me scratching my head, but Randy, it doesn't matter because they walked out with the Stanley Cup last year and all those moves, it's all for one reason. That's the one they win a Stanley Cup, and they were able to do that. So I can be critical all I want. I can look at all these trades and say that they were being a little bit overzealous and, trying to make too many moves in a short amount of time. But they walked away with a Stanley Cup championship, and I don't really think they necessarily care about the long term at this point. And why should they? Because they're having sustained success in the present time.
In the present time, for sure. It's interesting to see what will happen in the years to come. Guys, I do want to give a shout out to Jay Cardinale, who is listening to us via Twitter Spaces. And amongst a couple of comments, he did write, the way that Vegas built their squad was not the way you build their team. They draft a lot of older and expensive players. They bought at the deadline pretty much every year. But it worked. They won a cup in their 6th season of the franchise. Jake, thanks so much for the comment.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, Randy, just like to bump off that if I can,
of course,
it's where do you go? Because you're trading the assets you currently have for these players, right? You don't have a first-round pick. Stones got acquired. You don't have a first-round pick because you traded away for Jack Eichel. At some point, they're going to have to say, we need to start building from within. Now, you could be competitive and still build within. You could pick in the first round, mid to late first round picks, see what you have. Trading away assets. Like, would it hurt Vegas to say, you know what, Alex Pietrangelo, we're going to look to trade you. Maybe get a first, a second round pick back and a low to mid level prospect where okay, we might have something here. Because you could do that and still be competitive.
Well, or you could draft a nobody in the 3rd round, and that person being someone like Aiden Hill, and he could lead them to a Stanley Cup, and dare I say, threaten for the Conn Smythe Award. But I mean, like it makes perfect sense. And to scale it back to my neck of the woods here, and obviously the Toronto Raptors traded a ton of assets to make it to that championship in 2019, and now where are they? I mean, Fred VanVleet is gone. Kawhi Leonard left the first moment he could. Is Pascal Siakam going to stick around? And is it worth it? Is it worth? And I mean, it's a question not only for Vegas, but I guess just professional sports in general, where the Toronto Raptors had a consistent playoff clip, and they made a number of playoff runs. They won a couple of playoff series, and then they traded DeMar DeRozan, dare I say, the most popular Raptor in franchise history. And now, do they have that identity anymore? And it's just such an interesting. I don't even know if there is a question that I could to follow up with what I'm saying here. But well, I mean, is it worth going all in if you can't make it last for multiple seasons?
Depends how you view it. Would you rather have several years of sustained success with no championship, or one championship and a bunch of nothing years thereafter? If you're asking me, I would rather the championship, even if I've, varied a little or no direction. Will, what do you think? It's a very interesting question. I understand both sides.
I'd rather be competitive every single year because you don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. The playoffs are a complete crapshoot. It's a disaster. Did anybody have the Islanders going to Game 7 of these conference finals? I certainly didn't. I mean, to come within one, that Lightning squad was out of this world good. And the Islanders with Leo Komarov on line one took it to 7 games and lost 1-0 on a shorthanded goal. Where Florida gets into the playoffs because they have a fortunate of Pittsburgh losing to Chicago, and they go to the Stanley Cup Final. And in baseball, the Phillies go to the World Series. The Nationals go to the World Series. There's so many things that happen in the playoffs where as long as you get in, you have no idea. The Giants beat the Vikings in a road game in the playoffs. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. My goal is just get into the playoffs, and anything can happen. However, there's a difference to it between retooling and going all in. For example, I'll use the Yankees for an example. The Yankees every year make the playoffs. Every year they have a competitive product. But in 2016, they said, you know what? We're still a good team, but we have to try to get younger. So they acquired prospects in order to do that. And I think for Vegas, it's sustainable if they do it the correct way. That's why I said, call Pietrangelo, call Jonathan Marchessault, see if anybody wants to move elsewhere to clear some cap and get some picks and prospects back in return. It can be done, and it's very possible.
But it's easier said than done because you don't know who you're getting back in return.
Well, that's the gamble you take, and they are in the gambling capital of the world, so it might.
Yeah, but I mean, Will, you make the point that the Islanders, had a great start. They came across a Tampa team that was pretty much unstoppable, and I remember those years in the early 2000s and in the 90s where the Toronto Maple Leafs had a consistent run of playoff victories. They made a couple of conference finals. And I mean, hey, it's 1967 and counting for people in my community. And, for someone who's an Islanders fan like yourself, I was too young to remember the run of the 1980s when the Islanders kept winning all those cups. And they have been pretty much non-existent up until a couple years ago. Liam, you're a Rangers fan, and
that just goes with my point, Randy, is like I had to watch a miserable hockey team pretty much my whole life. I mean, I'm 23, and I would say in 17 of my 23 years on Earth, my team has been miserable. So I would accept making the playoffs every year with a chance to make it than be miserable and not do anything at all.
So, I mean, we did talk about the Vegas Golden Knights and if what they are doing, should that be the standard in terms of how professional sports teams should be run. That essentially is, what have you done for me lately? They're on their third coach, despite only completing 6 seasons in the NHL, and also despite making 2 Stanley Cup Final appearances. They have a revolving door of players coming to and from. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury seemed to be the poster boy for that franchise, and he was let go in his second season, I believe. Liam, there has been so many times where we have seen franchises just hold on to their star players, and maybe that did handcuff them in the end. With what Vegas has done, should that be the way franchises operate? Because in the end, it's all about winning that championship, is it not?
Yeah, you kind of got me in a conundrum here, right? Because I would agree with you. Going back to my previous point that the Stanley Cup is everything, right? But for me, I think sustained success does pay off in the end for some teams. And I'll go back to the 2018 Washington Capitals and how many years upon years upon years there was playoff disappointments featuring Alexander Ovechkin. And of course, they finally get the job done. Why? Because they stuck with their roster and they had belief in that core was going to get it done. And I think you're speaking from a little bit of the Maple Leafs perspective, right? With their core of players, especially among the forward group with Nylander, Matthews, Marner, and Tavares. But again, I think there have been examples of both. Sticking it out has paid off, and going for it has paid off. We saw it with the Vegas Golden Knights this past year, being aggressive, and we saw it featuring a great example with the Washington Capitals in 2018.
Yeah, I don't know if you. I don't think you were born when the Florida Marlins won their first World Series, but I mean, they were just an absolute dog franchise, and then they acquired all of these all-stars: Moises Alou, Bobby Bonilla. They had Kevin Brown. The list goes on. They won that World Series, and then the very next year they dismantled it, and they were I believe, the worst team record-wise in Major League Baseball. And but anyway, I digress. And hopefully, I don't know if Will is able to hear us. His video is off at the moment, but Liam,
I got you.
Yeah, okay, great. You're still able to hear. So, the question for both of you is Vegas a hockey town? I mean, is it the same as a Detroit? Is it the same as a Montreal, Toronto, the various boroughs of New York? Hey, Vegas seems to have a lot of interest. Will, very quickly before you jump on here, is that I was in Nashville in December. This past December, I wasn't able to go to the hockey game, but the game did let out, and there was a sea of Predators fans. And I mean, they just had this marketing blitz over the past couple of years. You think of Smashville, you think about the gold, the yellow during their playoffs and so on. But it didn't, it took a long time for that to happen. But I mean, hey, you take a look at that scene at T-Mobile when you're watching those Golden Knight games, and it seems to be quite a party.
Yeah, certainly. And is it a hockey town? I'd say so. And I think it's becoming more of a sports town, right? Vegas has the Raiders now. They have the Knights, and now they're trying to get the Oakland A's, who will probably move them to Vegas. And it's becoming a hockey town, which is nice to see. It's becoming a sports town, which is nice to see. It's crazy after all these years. You would think that Vegas, out of all the cities in the world, would have a sports team. And it wasn't until 6 years ago that it finally happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the question is that are those Golden Knight fans going to return if the team hits the tank for a couple of years? Multiple.
I don't even think, and like Liam and I spoke about this before, and I want to hear what Liam says, but I don't even think it has to be the fan base. Like, if you are a tourist in Vegas and you're down there on vacation, you're going to want to go see a hockey game. And I'm sorry, I'm all moving around. I'm trying to unpack everything.
No, of course.
You're going to want to see a hockey game if you are in Vegas. So I think regardless of the fan base or not, they're going to sell. It is Vegas. People go on vacation.
Sorry, Will, your audio is weak. So we just lost Will there, but hopefully he'll jump on momentarily. But, Liam, I mean, when you think of the NHL, do you think of Vegas as a hockey town?
See, I come at it from a different perspective. I don't put it on the same tier as necessarily a Detroit or a Toronto, because I think that there's longevity that's gone, with both of those organizations that have made it a hockey town. Especially with Toronto. And I'm sorry to bring this up, Randy, but they've gone
Appreciate
through
you.
their hardships, especially recently. And like you just said, what if there comes a time where Vegas, goes through similar struggles to where, it isn't a party anymore and you aren't competing for the Stanley Cup season after season, and I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of when for Vegas, because going back to our previous conversation, they have steered their organizational direction to where long term is not what they're thinking. So there's going to come a time where push is going to come to shove, and we will truly see whether Vegas is a hockey town. But for me, I wouldn't put them on that same tier as Detroit, Toronto, New York, etc.
Well, why don't we talk about Miami for a second? Because they did have a similar beginning, not maybe as immediate as the Vegas Golden Knights, but they did make the Cup Final in their third season way back in the mid-'90s there. And they lost to Colorado in the 96 final. But it was a long time coming for Florida to have any sort of relevance. It was that cup run in 96 where they went 26 years without winning a playoff round, and then they had some success the year prior with Andrew Brunette as coach, and obviously this run here. Will, I'm not sure if you're able to hear, but with regard, it seems that Will is with us. With regards to Miami, I mean, do you they obviously the fans returned, and I mean that was a long stretch of futility. I don't know how many Leaf fans would be that passionate after a 26-year drought of playoff relevance. But I guess, do you think that the team will be able to keep this momentum going? We did see the Montreal Canadiens make a cup final, and then everything had blown up in the end. I mean, where do you think the Panthers will fall into the season, next season?
I apologize for my camera. I'm trying to get it to work, but
hey, it's all good. It's all good. Your beautiful voice is all we need, Will.
It pops on now, and then I leave it, and then eventually it just cuts out.
All good.
We'll see. But like I said, Florida has done what I've been trying to tell Vegas to do, and that is to constantly. I mean, they've rebuilt from all the way from the bottom, right? Aaron Ekblad was a first overall pick. Sasha Barkov was a top pick. Jonathan Huberdeau was the top pick, was later flipped for Matthew Tkachuk. So they've done this before. They've built within the draft. They've signed key free agents. They've done it before. So I think so. And I don't think it's necessarily fan-driven. Again, people go away in the wintertime, especially down to South Florida, because it is very nice down there. So I think they'll have enough money as far as tourists, to be able to last and to do it again. And I think showing them what it was like to have both the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, in the championship at the same time, that city had an extra oomph to it. And I think it goes a long way.
Yeah. One person that has to be just over the moon with regards to the success of the teams that made it to the respective conference finals has to be Gary Bettman, the commissioner. I mean, he has put all those teams in the Southern United States, and I mean, Liam, as a member of the Atlanta Gladiators, obviously there was a run of the Thrashers in Atlanta during Bettman's reign. And that being said, you think about what's going on in Arizona and the really long stretch of time where Nashville took to a lot more prominence. Carolina, I mean, it seems that once Tom Dundon started to run the franchise, that it started to have its own identity, an identity that was kind of criticized by traditionalists in the National Hockey League. I mean, you are right at ground zero there in the Southern United States, and you are working in this market and industry. Do you think that, I mean, this is a sign of things to come, that hockey will start to evolve so much more with regards to like all these teams that seem to be in a good place the past couple years?
Yeah, I think hockey is just in a great place in general. And I just think, the enjoyment from fans, especially in the United States, is at an all-time high. And I think that absolutely trickles down to the southern part of the United States. And I think it's a great thing for hockey. It's a great thing for the NHL that, again, going back to the conversation that we had before, that for the teams that were that were conference finalists this past season, we're part of the southern part of the United States. And it goes to show that, it's competitive. The teams are competitive down there. And when that's the case, fan investment is going to be at its peak. So again, being at ground zero, I can definitely tell you that there's a lot of love for hockey in Georgia, and especially in the Atlanta area. And there's definitely a yearning for the Atlanta Thrashers to come back, or just for the NHL to come back in general. But fans should realize, and people locally should realize, that the Atlanta Gladiators are right here, and that we're a great ECHL example of where you can come and enjoy the game in this part of town. So.
And I think one thing that people just fail to realize is that you're watching a product where these players want to get to that next level. I mean, which is why I'm just in so much admiration of not only the Canadian Hockey League and the Ontario Hockey League, the feeder program for all these players to get drafted into the NHL. I mean, one of the major ones, of course, NCAA, and programs in Europe. You think about the G League, Raptors 905. It's just these people who are just doing everything they can to make it to the pros, and the dedication, and that they're not taking any shifts off because of what could potentially happen for the rest of their careers. So yeah, definitely be watching with great interest with regards to hockey, and especially the Southern United States, and especially in Liam's new hometown in the Atlanta area. Guys, why don't we take things over to the free agent world? And once the Stanley Cup was awarded, the 30th of June, 1st of July is the silly season, and we've seen a number of trades and free agent signings that have taken place. Will, with regards to what has happened, whether it be trade-wise or free agent-wise, I mean, which team has really impressed you the most?
I said it to Liam on our podcast yesterday. I said, people could talk about the Devils all they want, but I think the Rangers kind of made a statement. At the deadline, they went out and they got Kane. They went out and they got Tarasenko to say, we're going to score our way to the Cup final. Well, it didn't quite work out. So I said to Liam yesterday, I said, look, Chris Drury is a rookie general manager. He's learning as he goes. He's fairly young. He's a former player. He understands what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. What does he do? He goes, all right, I need more glue guys. He goes out and gets a former leader in Blake Wheeler for $800K, who's happened to score 55 points just a year ago. He goes and he gets Riley Nash to shore up the bottom six as depth insurance pieces. He goes and gets another leader in Jonathan Quick, a good mentor for Igor Shesterkin, a good mentor for the younger guys in the room. So I think he's realizing, hey, if we have a good room, not to say that the Rangers locker room wasn't very good, but when you have Kane and Tarasenko, who probably think that their crap don't stink, it might rub off on certain players. So I think he's realizing, let's prioritize culture over offense, and I think that's what he's doing. And I think it'll pay dividends for them. I really do. Blake Wheeler reminds me of a poor man's Chris Kreider, right? They're both really good leaders. They both play the game super, super hard. They have a net front presence. They have a little grit to them. And I think having both of them will go a very, very long way.
Well, to play devil's advocate, Will, just real quick, sorry to interrupt, but Blake Wheeler was stripped of the captaincy last year with the Winnipeg Jets.
That's
What does
true, but
that?
also Paul Maurice named him captain, and Rick Bowness, who has a history of, not being liked by his players, took the captaincy off Blake Wheeler. And I mean, to be fair, Dustin Brown lost his captaincy as well.
Well, it was just very well known around the hockey community and around the NHL world that Winnipeg's locker room issues were well known. So again, just gives me a little bit of hesitation, but no, I'm happy with the signings for the
But
Rangers.
Evander Kane on line one.
Look at it this way, Liam. Look at it this way, Liam. He's coming into a locker room where Chris Kreider, who in my mind should be the captain. Chris Kreider is not going to let anything happen in that locker room. Hell, he punched Tony DeAngelo for making fun of a backup goalie who's no longer on the team. Trouba, Kreider are not going to let whatever Blake, if he was even doing anything in Winnipeg, have on New York. That's not who Chris Kreider is. And when I think of the Rangers captain, I think of Kreider. I don't think of Trouba. I think of Kreider because he is a leader in my mind. He should be the captain.
But how many more leaders do you need, Will? And I mean, I do find this very ironic.
Though. I think you need a lot. I think you need a lot of leaders because it can hurt. Blake Wheeler has been there, he's done that. Trouba has been there, he's done that. Trouba and Wheeler are former captains, and Trouba probably said, "Let's get Wheeler. He's he's a good player. He's a good leader." They know each other from their time in Winnipeg.
But okay, so you have Kane and Tarasenko. You sign Wheeler. You have Jonathan Quick. How many voices do you need in the end? It's just, I could kind of see. Do you need someone like Jonathan Quick when you have an Igor Shesterkin? You have 3 cups in Patrick Kane. You got the cup with Tarasenko when he was with St. Louis. I mean, Blake Wheeler, he gave it everything he could in Winnipeg. But change, I guess, did have to happen. It's so easy for us to say that. And also, I do find it ironic that you, the Islander fan, is giving props to the Rangers, while Liam, the Ranger fan, is kind of disputing everything you said. So,
Liam knows firsthand. I mocked him for signing or trading for Kane. I mocked him. I said it was going to be horrible. I said the guy can't defend. He can't back check. And it was evident in the playoffs that he was very invisible at times. And listen, my team is run by Lou Lamoriello. We used to be run by Barry Trotz as well. This is what they do. They find these gritty guys who could be a difference maker, like the J.G. Pageaus, the Blake Wheelers, the Kyle Palmieris, the Cizicases, the Clutterbucks. This is what they do. And to a sense, it worked. Look at Tampa, Barclay Goodrow, Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman. To a sense, it worked. Ross Colton. So teams are picking up on it, and I think it's going to work.
Well, and I do want to give another shout out to Jay Cardinale, another Rangers fan. He said that he's also happy that the Rangers got a coach that won't change the lines 4 times in a game, and I guess he's referring to Peter Laviolette. Now, it has been a number of years since he found the Holy Grail, winning the Cup with Carolina. That was back in 2006. But I mean, he had a stop in Philly. He had a stop in Nashville. His time in the Islanders as well. Do you think that? What do you guys think about in terms of Laviolette? I mean, yeah, sure, he has the moxie, but I mean, doesn't moxie have an expiry date?
Is he a significant improvement over Gerard Gallant? Probably not. But I think that it just came down to the fact that the Rangers needed a new voice in that locker room. I think Gallant lost the room at the end of the year. I think when you're seeing no development in terms of your 2 top young players in Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere, you can't really point your finger at the player, at the 19, 20-year-old. You got to point your finger at the coach. And I think switching out Gallant for Peter Laviolette, more of an offensive approach, like Jay Cardinale said, won't switch up the lines 4 times every single period. I certainly agree with that, and I definitely resonate with that as a Ranger fan. But yeah, no, I think it's a good move. I think based on the options that the Rangers had, I think Laviolette was probably the best choice. Because if they had gone with John Hines, ask Will, I probably wouldn't have been too happy.
That being said, it seems that there is something afoot with regards to star NHL players, budding stars in the league, who are playing for Canadian teams, and that they have reportedly requested a trade. Now, I mean, you could look at this in multiple angles. I mean, it's been 30 years since a team based out of Canada has won the Stanley Cup. Of course, a number of teams have made the Cup final between Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Montreal, not Toronto, but hey, I digress. But I mean, hey, we saw it last year with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk wanting to leave Calgary. We have reportedly seen it with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who wanted to get out of Winnipeg. Now he's in LA. Tyler Toffoli apparently, and Connor Hellebuck apparently wants out. I mean, Will, do you think that this is the new norm, or is this just a coincidence? Like, I mean, should there be some concern?
This isn't the new normal. I mean, Alex DeBrincat is kind of pushing his way to go to Detroit, and I think they're copying how NFL players do it, NBA players do it. So this is the new normal, in my opinion. I'm not surprised, especially Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's done this before. He wanted out of Columbus. Now he wants out of Winnipeg.
So, I mean, look, the reality is that if you are an athlete, a star athlete, hey, and maybe you can even go further than this. If you're a celebrity of any sorts, whether it be in acting or if you're a business mogul, you're going to get recognized, you're going to get the praise, and you're also going to get the criticism. And if I was leading a league, if I was a Adam Silver, if I was a Gary Bettman, you do want as many franchises as you possibly can, number one. Number two, you do want to have the opportunity to have every team get an equal shot in winning the championship. It's interesting because years back, I remember the Golden State Warriors being a team of irrelevance, and now all of a sudden they're one of the more appealing franchises in the NBA history. Could the same thing happen for the Denver Nuggets? I mean, they have a couple of pieces that could lead them that way in Jamal Murray and, of course, Nikola Jokic. But people get into hockey, and Canada has loved hockey for all these years. But I mean, is that essentially the downfall for players not wanting to play here? It just seems too unfortunate for anything. Liam, I don't know if you had any comment towards this.
Yeah, and no, for me, I don't really think it's the market that makes players not want to be there. I just think it's the specific situation. And, I'll go back to what Will said before. If you take a look at Pierre-Luc Dubois and his career trajectory, he forced his way out of Columbus to get his way to Winnipeg. So you knew that there was going to come a time that if Winnipeg wasn't, a Stanley Cup contender, a realistic Stanley Cup contender, that Dubois was probably going to do the same and probably force his way to another team that could utilize his services more. So I'll disagree with you and Will in that point, that I don't think it's a trend. I just think it's player specific, and you got to look at each situation basis by basis.
And it'd be interesting to see what happens with Calgary, with Winnipeg. I mean, hey, even communities like Toronto. I mean, Calgary's general manager Brad Treliving apparently looked like he pulled a rabbit out of his hat when he got Jonathan Huberdeau, MVP finalist, or if he was I do apologize, I can't remember if he was a finalist for the MVP his final season in Florida, but he had over 100 points and then completely crapped it his first season in Calgary. But then he signs Nazem Kadri, and then of course he was let go. Treliving was. What's going to happen in Toronto? I mean, that remains to be seen. And what's going to happen, I mean, in terms of Chicago, there was quite a run with Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. Obviously, Kane is no longer with Chicago. Toews is at the twilight of his career. And lo and behold, there's a new savior on a shiny white horse, and that's Connor Bedard. And there's a lot riding on Connor Bedard being that next great superstar. And Liam, I mean, what do you expect out of this kid from Western Canada? I mean, he had an incredible run in the Western Hockey League and is apparently the next Sidney Crosby. I mean, how long a journey is Connor Bedard going to need until he gets the Chicago Blackhawks to where they were?
I expect a generational talent, and it's an embarrassment of riches, right? Just for the organization of the Chicago Blackhawks to be able to draft Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, to be able to rebuild your team and create a dynasty from 2010 up until 2015, and now have the chance to do it again with a talent potentially with a higher ceiling than Patrick Kane had in 2007. Connor Bedard belongs in the conversation with Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby as on the short list of the most elite number one picks to come through the NHL. And for Chicago, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. I think that might be a little bit of a reach, but I think that their general manager is definitely trying to put the pieces in place to have Bedard have a successful first year with the team.
Well, I mean, when you have somebody like a Connor Bedard, there is obviously a lot of observation into how long he's going to take. If you compare someone like Gretzky, he won his first Stanley Cup in his sixth NHL season. Lemieux needed 7. Sidney Crosby needed 4. Connor McDavid, excuse me, hasn't made it to the Cup Final yet. And with whether you measure success in terms of championships, and all roads lead to that, you do it does help considerably to win a championship if you are one of those elite level talents. With regards to Bedard, I mean, Liam just said that he doesn't believe the Blackhawks are going to make the playoffs. Do you think the same way? And I mean, do you think that Bedard's going to need a few more years and a few more pieces to get Chicago back into, that winning feeling?
Yeah, I don't think they're far away. I think the playoffs might be a stretch this season, but I mean, they signed guys like Corey Perry and Nick Foligno to kind of keep them relevant and reach the cap floor. And, they're not going to be very good, but they're not going to be very bad. I think they're going to be what the Red Wings were kind of this season, where they were hovering around a wild card spot, hovering, and then kind of flamed out at the end. I think that's what we're going to see.
Going to be some exciting times on the Midway for sure. And, as a kid growing up, the Leafs and the Blackhawks were in the same division. And there was always fear of the likes of Jeremy Roenick and Ed Belfour. And when I think of the Blackhawks, the same with the Red Wings and, with Connor Bedard, I mean, he just seems like the real deal. And it'd be really exciting to see. Guys, as we record this episode, it is the 8th of July. I'd be remiss if I didn't wish you boys a happy 4th of July. And if you weren't aware, Canada Day was on the 1st of July. So, I mean, I like to think of the first week as birthday week for our respective countries. And, when I think of the 4th of July, and I'm sure you two guys being a couple of New Yorkers can appreciate this, I can't help but not think about the hot dog eating contest that takes place at Coney Island. I mean, I remember the days of Kobayashi, and this guy was just unstoppable. And then, lo and behold, here comes Joey Chestnut. And once again, this guy is champion of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And, very quickly, I mean, I gotta ask, celebrating the 4th of July, especially as New Yorkers, proud New Yorkers that you are, I mean, does it include The hot dog eating contest?
I mean, it ain't a 4th of July, in my opinion, until you have some hot dogs or see the hot dog eating competition. Like, I live, I live by the shore, so I'm always at the beach on the 4th of July, and we always have hot dog. I'm actually heading to the beach right now, and it's always fun because you have the hot dogs, you have the cheeseburgers, but it ain't the same until Joey Chestnut eats his 60 plus damn hot dogs on the 4th of July.
I
And
mean,
I don't know if you knew this, Randy, but it was supposed to be canceled this year because of the rain. And the rumor on Twitter is that Chestnut went back to the guys and said, "We're going to do this, and we're going to do this, motherfucker." And he may have just wanted to win, but pretty. I mean, he's my MJ right now. You know, that type of comment. That's like, yeah, that's prime MJ. Hell yeah, let's go have some hot dogs.
well, I mean, I don't know if you're tongue in cheek, but I mean, Liam, like, how revered is Joey Chestnut with regards to to your country? And I mean, I can imagine that maybe not a lot of people think about Chestnut outside of 4th of July weekend, but I mean, you have to think that he would get recognized if he was to walk through the various streets of good old USA.
It's pretty crazy that Joey Chestnut would be recognized on the streets of Coney Island or New York City, but Tyler Sagan wouldn't be recognized, in a Texas mall or what have you. But going back to what Will said, 4th of July just doesn't seem complete until Joey Chestnut has scoffed down his 65, whatever his average is, plus hot dogs. So, yeah, no, definitely. It's great to see a lot of pride being from New York to be able to watch from afar and watch that tradition every year from Coney Island. And it's great to see the passing of the torch too, right? From Kobayashi to Joey Chestnut. You know, who's going to be the next one to take over the reins? I think there might be somebody else soon. So.
Well, I
I'll
mean,
do it. I'll do it. I'll take it over. I'll take it over.
what's your record
Yeah,
there?
you're going to do it, Will?
Sorry, Will. Will, how
I don't
many?
know. I mean, I get hot dog without thinking.
Sorry, you're kind of breaking up there, Will. Hopefully, we could get you back. But
Oh,
you know,
I, I said, I said I could barely get through 2 hot dogs without feeling sick. So I don't know how he eats 62 and
oh,
goes about his life.
well, truth be told, I went to a Jays game and they have $2 hot dog Tuesdays. I had three and I was at my limit. And I mean, like I'm a guy who's 6'3", 250 pounds. Like, I mean, I got some space in me. And Joey Chestnut, let alone the female winner of the hot dog eating contest. I mean, she's a little thing. Like, I mean, she was like no more than 5'5", 130 pounds, give or take. And I mean, she crushed what, 40? Good Lord. I mean, I'd love to win a title, but I mean, I don't know if I could douse my hot dogs in water, let alone, I mean, not have it with mustard and sauerkraut. I mean, that's my go-to, guys. That's that. But hey, I digress.
Randy, let me say one last thing because I do have to jump off. I do gotta hop on a quick call with my job before I
Oh,
finish
sure.
up my
Yeah,
day
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Because I'm operating as it's 5 p.m. My time because I gotta go to bed early today.
Yeah, I guess you
But
are.
really quickly, the hot dog eating contest is a lot of fun, but I think I would do very well in a lemonade drinking contest. I scarfed down sugar like it's water. And it's awful for your body. It's awful. But I think if there was a lemonade, and there is a lemonade drinking contest, Eric Badlands won it this year. He's from Long Island. I would do so well in that thing. I would scarf down lemonades like it's nothing. But Randy, it was great, great, great doing this again. I want to do this again on a day where I'm not hectic. Maybe Liam and I could figure out a time that works best with your schedule. I know in a couple weeks I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 4 straight
Perfect.
days where I'm not working, so we could work something out like that. But Randy, it was great to have, great to join you again. Liam, it's great as always. I think we're very good together, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Will, I mean, you were just finishing off a shift from 2 to 10. I mean, you were on your way home in your car when you first logged on this call. Really appreciate you. Yeah, we'll definitely get together. I can't thank you enough for squeezing me in. And yeah, let's get together really soon, okay? He is Will Pesek, a producer from News 12 out of Hunter Valley in Long Island, New York. And, Liam, very quickly, before we sign off here, you were talking about the fact that Joey Chestnut may get recognized and someone like Tyler Seguin may not. And Victor Wembanyama sure got recognized by, of all people, Britney Spears, a pop music icon. And reports suggested that Britney Spears saw Victor Wembanyama as they were both crossing paths through some hotel in Las Vegas. Spears wanted to take a picture, and Wembanyama's security detail gives her like a slap across the face, and video had surfaced. I mean, very quickly, how surprising is it? I mean, that this kid who hasn't even played a game of NBA basketball is getting recognized by one of the top music stars in history. Oh, Will, you're on mute.
Excuse me, it was muted. I'll say this first and foremost. I think Victor Wembanyama is one of the most recognizable athletes in the world. So, Britney Spears definitely noticing him, not too much of a surprise, but the back slap from his security team, that definitely is. And just not a great situation for a player who's really beginning to make his mark in the NBA. I think that was right before his first ever preseason game, which was last night in the Summer League. And he didn't have a great performance. So maybe Britney Spears had some voodoo and put it over Victor Wembanyama yesterday. But yeah, definitely a tough situation. I think he's handling it well. And welcome to America.
Yeah, I mean, if I am feeling the most, I'm thinking that after hearing of this story, there is no chance that Britney Spears would see Brandon Miller or would notice Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson. And these guys and all of those kids who got drafted in just in this past NBA draft, there's no chance that Britney Spears would want to take a picture with any of those kids other than Victor Wembanyama. So honestly, hey, good on Victor. And it'd be along with him and Connor Bedard. It's definitely some exciting times for not only Chicago but for San Antonio as well. Liam, finally, as you, me, and Will, we were talking about hockey in the Southern United States, and I mean, the Arizona Coyotes just seems to be an absolute dog with fleas. And with regards to where things are right now, they're playing in a 5,000 seat arena at Arizona State University. You have to think that the clock's going to strike 12 and that the Coyotes are going to ship out somewhere. What do you think? Correct me if I'm wrong, if you actually think that there may be a chance to revive this franchise in the greater Phoenix area, but where do you think the Coyotes are going to be in a couple of years? I mean, do you have a city in mind?
I do. I don't think that they're going to be in Arizona. I can tell you that. Although I do think that Gary Bettman is going to exercise every single option that he has to try and keep the Coyotes in the state. But for me, I think there are a few notable markets. Of course, everyone's going to look at Quebec, right, and say that another market in in the Montreal area. But for me, I don't really think it's suitable. For me, the answer is Houston. They have the arena where the Houston Rockets play, I believe the Toyota Center. And again, I think Texas is a big enough state to where, they can add another fan base and bring Houston in. But
Well, I definitely agree with the sentiment of, with Quebec City, I just don't see it happening because I think it's one of those markets where, we're obviously seeing it these days where a lot of star talent are showing a lot of apprehension in playing in Canadian markets. It'll be tough to have a life of anonymity. And let alone in a community that's significantly French speaking. Montreal, it's split 50-50, but Quebec City, it's a significantly French speaking community. With Houston, I got to tell you, I don't feel that Houston's going to be an option as well. Like I went to a Golden Knights game in its first season. They were playing San Jose, and they already had Raiders gear because the announcement was made that the Raiders were going to move from Oakland to Vegas, and there was already flooded with the stores were already flooded in the strip with Raiders gear. But you think about Houston, I mean, between the Rockets, the Texans, the Astros, and the college sports scene, that an NHL team is going to muscle its way in and get into the sports calendar. I just don't see it. With me, I'd love to get your thoughts, putting you on the spot here. I think the best market is Salt Lake City. I think Salt Lake City, Utah is, and you take a look at the Jazz, just an incredible, basketball market. They don't have an NFL team. And I don't really know what their college scene is like. Maybe you could sort of chime in on this. But with regards to Utah, it seems like it's a very passionate fan base. And it seems like they could use another team, especially during those winter months. What do you think?
Yeah, the second team out of my mouth would have been, or second city out of my mouth rather, would have been Utah. I think that would be a good choice to expand the NHL too. I know that they have an owner of the Jazz who definitely wouldn't mind expanding to the NHL as well. Of course, the arena is always a big factor to look into, and they have that covered up as well. So I definitely think it's an option. I think if push comes to shove and Coyotes have to move, and I think, like I said before, I think Gary Bettman is going to try his damnedest to get the Coyotes to stay where they're at. But like you and me, I think both agree on. I think that the Coyotes are not going to be able to stay where they're at, and I think Salt Lake City is a good spot for them. So again, we'll see. And again, just speaking from the ECHL perspective, the Utah Grizzlies play over there, and they're very successful, attendance wise and stuff like that. So, again, a little bit of a smaller scale in terms of the ECHL, but hockey works in Utah. So again, we'll see.
Yeah, we definitely will. And Liam, I can't thank you and Will enough for joining me tonight. And doing up this podcast. It's I never really thought that to connect with such passionate people outside of my country, to talk about the sports that we love so much. Really hope that we could cut it up one of these days. Love to introduce you to my co-caster, Tony Antonio. He's actually listening on Twitter Spaces, and we've had some really passionate discussions on and off the sports scene. So, Liam, thank you so much for everything. Good luck on your second season as a part of the Gladiators. Really hope everything works well for you, and hope you have a great summer, my man.
Oh, wow, I'm muted again. Well, thank you for having us, and we'll talk about before then. So.
Absolutely. That is Liam Gotimer. Want to thank Will Pesek without a doubt. And I do want to give a shout out once to Emily Morgan. I had the chance to interview Emily a couple of weeks ago. She's based out of Milwaukee, and she has done a really great project with regards to redesigning sports logos. It's taken off as a hobby, and she has attracted 100,000 Instagram followers alone. I'm actually wearing one of her designs, and I don't even know if she knows that I had purchased some of her products. So I want to give a shout out to Emily. I definitely want to give a shout out to Will, to Jake Cardinelli, and to Tony Antonio, who is listening. Will Pesek, obviously, and Liam, thanks so much. Let's do it again soon, okay?
My pleasure. We'll talk soon, Randy. Thank you.
You bet. This is What's Up the Sports Podcast. I'm Randy Kure. Check us out for information of this episode as well as episodes from the past. Website is whatsUPodcast.blogspot.com. Internet for social media, Instagram is What's Up Podcast, as well as on Twitter. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe, and we will talk to you next time.